Hi guys, I'm Laura Vitale, and on this episode of Laura in the Kitchen, I want to share with you my recipe for apple dumplings. Dumplings, whatever you call them, they are outrageously good, and I really seriously thought I had shared this recipe with you guys already. So when Joe brought it up, I said, well, I've already shared that with him last year. He's like, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. He says, lady, I edit these things. No, you didn't. So I went through and I realized that I didn't. So I'm thrilled to share it with you because it's so ridiculously good. I don't make them often because they're quite rich, but they are worthy. And it's fall time and it is the season of indulging and just wonderfulness. So I'm sharing it with you. The first thing we're going to work on is making the pie crust. You'll need all-purpose flour, salt. I have some really cold unsalted butter and vegetable shortening and some cold water. Those are the ingredients you'll need to make the pie crust, and then I'll show you the remaining ingredients when this is ready. Now I'm going to make this in my standing mixer. You can also make pie crust by hand, of course, or in a food processor. My food processor is a little bit on the small side, so it doesn't blend things the way I'd like it to. So if I was making the smaller, like half of the amount, I would make it in my food processor, but because I want to make a big batch, I'm going to make this in my standing mixer. I'm going to add my dry ingredients, my flour and my salt to my standing mixer. And then to that, I'm going to add my cold fats. And it's really important that your vegetable shortening and your butter are really cold because that way it makes your pie crust really flaky and just awesome. And I'm going to mix these together until the butter and shortening are incorporated throughout the flour really well. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's there. I'm going to start adding a little bit of cold water at a time. You'll need about 6 tablespoons or so, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. That's why you add it a little bit at a time until you get the consistency you're looking for. And I'll show you what to look for when it's there. You basically just want, if you take some of this mixture and pinch it between your fingers, it should hold together. It's not quite there yet. I can tell it needs a bit more water. You can also use milk if you wanted to. It doesn't make the pastry as light, but it works. So almost there. Okay, perfect. Let me just take some plastic wrap. I need 2 pieces of plastic wrap to wrap my dough in. I'm going to actually divide this in half. It makes it a little bit easier to work with once I'm ready to roll this out. So I'm just going to take 1 piece for now. Take my dough. It looks perfect. It looks like it's crumbly, but look, when you pinch it, it holds together well. I really want to work quickly because what I don't want is for the fats to get warm and start melting. I want these to be really cold. And I'm just going to wrap this in a piece of plastic, form it into a little disc, pop it to the side, do the same thing again. And I'm going to pop these into the fridge to set for about half hour to 45 minutes. I want those fats to get nice and cold again because now that we've handled it a little bit and mixed it and it's becoming a little bit warm. You can tell that that's a lot smaller than this one, but it's all good. Don't worry. All right, I'm going to wrap these up. I'm going to pop these into my fridge for about 45 minutes, and then we'll proceed to the next step. Now, I've got my pie crust here that was in the fridge for about 45 minutes, and then to make the rest of the recipe, you'll need some apples. I've got some Granny Smith apples that I've halved, and then I peeled, halved, and then took out the very core. I've got some water, apple cider, granulated sugar, brown sugar, a pinch of cinnamon, additional cinnamon, some unsalted butter, some flour, because we're going to need it to roll it, and then that's about it. Now I'm going to get going on making like the sauce that makes these just so incredible, and it couldn't be easier. I've got a large saucepan there. Woo! If I can get this on, let's see. There you go. Cooperate. Now to that, I'm going to add in my water and my apple cider. You can also use apple juice if you wanted to. I like the flavor of apple cider a bit more. I'm going to add both kinds of sugar, and it is very, very sweet and indulgent, but this is something you make, I make this maybe twice a year. They're delightful, really delightful. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook these together until it kind of boils and the sugar starts to melt and gets nice and thick. While that's happening, I'm going to work quickly because your apples are going to brown unless you keep them in like lemon water, which I'm not going to. I'm going to make things kind of quick on myself and easy. I'm going to start rolling out my dough. I'm going to flour my board, and then I'm going to take, I'm actually going to move these here so it's not so close to the heat. I'm going to take one piece of my pastry, flour it on both sides, and then I kind of just use the warmth of my hands to get it going. And then I'm going to roll this out. I also have a baking pan here, a baking dish that I've buttered. You want to get that ready. Okay. And then keep it moving. You can see I am not stopping. I'm going to just keep it moving, otherwise it's going to stick. And you want to work quickly, because if your shortening and butter start to melt, then you've got quite a pickle on your hands. You don't want that to happen. So I can hear that that's boiling. I'm going to work really, really quickly. I want this to be thin, but not too thin. So now I've just cut my pie crust into 4 pieces. Now I'm taking one of my apples that I've halved, and I take a piece of butter, dip it into the cinnamon, and then place it right into the center of your little triangle. Take some water, run it around the edges, because this is essentially going to be like glue. And now what you can do is, if you find that this is just too much for one person, because like I mentioned, it is really rich, what you can do is that you can cut these in quarters, and then that way you have, instead of 8 servings, now you have even more. So it's up to you, really. I think half is generous, but again, I do like to feed people in a nice, generous way. And all I'm doing is just wrapping the pie crust around my apple. And if it's too much dough, I just snap it off, and I can tell that this one's gonna need it, so I'm gonna put it on that. And then just pinch everything together. It doesn't have to look perfect, because these really are not meant to be the most beautiful thing in the world. It's just one of the most delicious things in the world. I already have some that I've done with my first piece of pie crust, and I'm just going to proceed with the rest of them. And then my sauce is reducing nicely. I want it to reduce by about half, and then we'll get going on putting it together and popping it in the oven. Now you just take your sauce and you pour over your beautiful dumplings, and then mostly it's just going to go into the bottom, and it's that's what it's going to cook in, and it's just going to be fantastic. And then as this bakes, because it's going to need to be in the oven for about 30 minutes or so at 425, I come in there every 5 minutes or so and then just spoon the sauce over top of the dumplings, so that I'm kind of basting them throughout their baking, and it's just the most fantastic thing ever. They are so outrageously good. Just you wait until you make these. Okay, nearly there. And of course, the sauce, while it's in the oven, it's going to thicken and be absorbed by the pie crust. It's fantastic. I'm gonna pop this in. I've got my oven preheated at 425, and they'll be in there for about 25 to 30 minutes. I take my baking pan and I put it over top of a baking sheet that I've lined with parchment or aluminum foil. That way, if there's any bubbleage goes overboard, you catch it on the aluminum foil. It doesn't get all sticky and stuff on your baking sheet or on your oven. So I'm gonna pop this in. I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out, and remember to baste these every 5 to 6 minutes or so. I'll show you what they look like when they're done. My dumplings were in the oven for about 35 minutes. They range between 25 to 40 minutes. It really depends on how big they are, like depending on the size of your apples. If they're small apples, the halves are going to be smaller, therefore they'll take about 25 minutes. If they're in medium, they'll take about 35 minutes. If they're large, they'll take about 40 to 45 minutes. You're just looking for the top to be really beautiful golden brown, and it is just, oh my goodness, if you could understand what this smells like right now, you'd understand my excitement. Now the bottom of the crust obviously is going to get a little bit soggy because it's been cooking in syrup, but it's good for me. And then you just take the syrup and you pour some of that over the top. Woo! Wee! Remember that the only thing that's sweet in the recipe is actually the syrup, and I drown mine in syrup, and it's really ridiculous because the apples are quite tart because we used Granny Smith apples, and there's no sugar in the pie crust either. So once you put everything together, it's like a match made in food heaven. Look at the steam. The apple has cooked down really nicely. This syrup is really nice and thick. Gonna give me a minute though, because this is hot, very, very hot. No. I don't even know. Okay, so picture Picture apple pie in a sticky, gooey, delightful syrup. That is what this is. And it is too good not to have a second bite. Now when I eat something, I kind of massacre it because that's just the way I always have been like that. I always mash things around and mix them around, and this is like perfect because I mash it right into that syrup so it gets soaked up even more. It is the most delightful thing of life in the universe of ever. Go to laurainthekitchen.com. I'm pointing at you with my butterfinger. I must be really serious about this one. Go to laurainthekitchen.com to get this recipe. If you make these, please let me know how much you love them because we go crazy for them around here. And it is something we don't make very frequently. So when we make them, it's a real treat. And I hope that it's a real treat in your home as well. laurainthekitchen.com will have the recipe waiting for you. I will see you next time. See you. I was so excited about this, I call this a butterfinger. Clearly, it's a butter knife. Oh yeah. Hot though. I want to be alone. Go away.